Two German Shepherd was crying from an empty water tank. What baby did next left everyone in tears. The sound that changed everything started as a whisper in the wind. But what 5-year-old Tommy did when he found the source will absolutely shatter your heart. Like and subscribe if stories of incredible bravery touch your soul, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from right now. Tommy's small hands were covered in dirt as he dug through the pile of old wooden planks behind the abandoned Henderson farm. His sister Emma stood a few feet away, her 12-year-old face scrunched in disapproval as she watched her little brother's latest adventure. The October sun was already starting its descent, painting the overgrown fields in shades of gold and amber, and their mother would expect them home soon. "Tommy, we need to go," Emma called out, checking the time on her phone for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. "Mom's shift ends in an hour, and she'll freak if we're not home." But Tommy wasn't listening. He never really listened when something caught his attention, and right now, his entire focus was on a strange sound drifting through the air. It was faint, almost lost in the rustling of dry corn stalks, but it was there, a crying sound that made his chest feel tight and strange. "Do you hear that?" Tommy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He stood perfectly still, his head tilted to one side like a bird listening for worms. Emma sighed, pushing a strand of brown hair behind her ear. "Hear what? The wind?" "Tommy, seriously, we need to—" The sound came again, clearer this time. It wasn't the wind, it was crying, desperate, painful crying that seemed to echo from somewhere beneath their feet. Emma's complaints died in her throat. She heard it too now, and the sound sent shivers racing down her spine. It wasn't human crying, but it was crying nonetheless, the kind of sound that spoke of suffering without needing words. "It's coming from over there," Tommy said, already moving toward the far corner of the property where the old water tank stood like a forgotten monument to better days. The concrete structure rose from the ground like a giant's cup, 15 feet of weathered gray walls that hadn't held water in at least a decade. Emma hurried after her brother, her longer legs easily keeping pace with his determined sprint. "Tommy, wait! We don't know what's down there." But Tommy had already reached the edge of the tank, his small fingers gripping the rough concrete lip as he peered into the darkness below. What he saw made him gasp, and not the scared kind of gasp that Emma expected. It was the kind of gasp that came when something broke your heart into a million pieces. At the bottom of the tank, 2 German Shepherds lay on the cold concrete. The larger one, clearly the mother, was trying to stand but kept collapsing, her left hind leg twisted at an angle that made Tommy's stomach hurt just looking at it. Beside her, a younger dog, maybe a year old, was pawing at the walls, crying those heartbreaking sounds that had drawn them here. "Oh my God," Emma breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. "How did they— Tommy, no!" But Tommy was already swinging one leg over the edge of the tank, his jaw set with the kind of determination that Emma had only seen once before, 6 months ago when their father had put on his firefighter gear for the last time. "They need help," Tommy said simply, as if that explained everything. As if being 5 years old and barely 4 feet tall didn't matter when someone needed saving. "Tommy, you can't climb down there. It's too deep. You'll get hurt." Emma grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back, but Tommy yanked free with surprising strength. "Dad wouldn't wait," he said, and those 3 words hit Emma like a physical blow. "Dad always said heroes don't wait when someone needs help. They need help, Emma. Look at them." Emma looked again, and this time she really saw. The mother dog's eyes weren't just filled with pain, they held a kind of desperate intelligence, a plea that transcended species. The younger dog had stopped crying and was now pressed against its mother, trembling. "We should call someone," Emma said weakly, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew it was pointless. They were at least 3 miles from town, and by the time help arrived, she looked at the mother dog's labored breathing and knew they didn't have that kind of time. Tommy had already found an old rope coiled near the tank's edge, probably left behind by whoever had abandoned this place. He tied one end around his waist with the kind of knot their father had taught them, a bowline, strong and secure. "Hold this," he told Emma, pushing the other end of the rope into her hands. "Don't let go." "Tommy, please," Emma begged, tears starting to blur her vision. "What if something happens to you? Mom already lost Dad. She can't lose you too." Tommy paused then, just for a moment, and looked at his sister with eyes far too old for his 5 years. "That's why I have to do this," he he said softly. Because Dad would want me to. Because being scared isn't a reason not to help. Before Emma could respond, Tommy was over the edge, his small hands gripping the rope as he walked his feet down the concrete wall. Emma braced herself, wrapping the rope around her waist and digging her heels into the ground. Her brother might be small, but he was still heavy enough to make her arms strain. "Careful!" she called down, her voice cracking with fear. Tommy's feet hit the bottom with a soft thud, and immediately both dogs reacted. The younger one backed away, growling low in its throat, but the mother did something extraordinary. Despite her obvious pain, she lifted her head and looked directly at Tommy, and in that look was something that made Tommy's fear melt away entirely. "It's okay," Tommy said softly, holding out his hand palm down, just like Dad had taught him. "I'm here to help. I promise I'm here to help." The mother dog's tail moved, not quite a wag, more like an acknowledgement. Tommy took a careful step forward, then another. The younger dog was still growling, but the mother made a soft sound, almost like she was telling it to stop, and miraculously it did. Tommy knelt beside the injured dog, his small hands incredibly gentle as he touched her fur. She was wearing a collar, he noticed, but it wasn't a normal collar. It was thick and black with metal attachments, and hanging from it was something that looked like a small computer USB drive wrapped in waterproof plastic. "What is that?" Tommy muttered, but his attention was quickly drawn back to the dog's injury. Her leg was definitely broken, and there were cuts on her paws like she'd been trying to climb the walls until they bled. Tommy pulled off his backpack, his favorite one with the superhero on it, and took out his water bottle. It was almost full. Mom always made sure they had water when they went exploring. He cupped his hand and poured water into it, offering it to the mother dog. She drank desperately, her whole body shaking with the effort. When the water was gone, she looked at Tommy with such gratitude that he felt tears sting his eyes. "Emma!" he called up. "They're really thirsty, and the mom's leg is broken bad. Can you climb back up?" Emma's voice was tight with worry. Tommy looked at the rope, then at the dogs. The younger one had crept closer and was now sniffing his hand. "Not without them," he said. "Tommy, you can't carry 2 dogs up a rope." "Then we need to get help," Tommy called back. But even as he said it, he couldn't bring himself to leave. The mother dog had managed to shift her position slightly, and now Tommy could see what she'd been protecting with her body, a small pile of fabric that looked like it might have been a blanket once, and beneath it, something that caught the fading sunlight. More USB drives, at least 3 of them, all carefully wrapped and hidden. The mother dog saw him looking and did something that made Tommy's heart skip. She pushed the fabric toward him with her nose, then looked up at the edge of the tank, then back at Tommy. It was like she was trying to tell him something important. "What is it, girl?" Tommy asked softly. "What are you trying to show me?" The dog's response was to press her head against his small chest, a gesture so trusting and desperate that Tommy found himself crying. Not the loud, messy crying of a hurt child, but the quiet tears of someone who understood that sometimes the world was cruel and unfair, and all you could do was try to make it a little better. "Tommy!" Emma's voice was different now, panicked. "Someone's coming! I can see a car on the road." Tommy's head snapped up. They weren't supposed to be here. The Henderson farm was private property, even if it had been abandoned for years. If they got in trouble, Mom would be so disappointed, and she had enough to worry about already. "It's stopping," Emma called down. "Tommy, it's Grandpa's truck and Mom's car." Relief flooded through Tommy so fast it made him dizzy. Grandpa Robert would know what to do. He always knew what to do. He'd been a police detective for 30 years before he retired, and there wasn't a problem in the world he couldn't solve. "Down here!" Tommy shouted. "Grandpa! Mom! We're down here!" The sound of running feet, then 3 faces appeared at the edge of the tank, Mom's worried face framed by her nurse scrubs, Grandpa's weathered face already assessing the situation, and Emma's tear-streaked face. "Thomas James Mitchell!" His mother's voice was a mixture of fear, relief, and anger. "What on earth are you doing down there?" "They needed help," Tommy said simply, his hand still resting on the mother dog's head. "They're hurt, Mom. Really hurt." Linda Mitchell's expression softened as she took in the scene below. Her tiny son, surrounded by 2 injured dogs, looking up at her with those earnest blue eyes that were so much like his father's. It hurt to look at them sometimes. "Of course they did," she said softly. Of course you had to help. Grandpa Robert was already moving, his movements efficient despite his 68 years. Linda, there's a ladder in my truck. Emma, go get it. We need to get them all out of there. As Emma ran for the ladder, Robert studied the dogs with the kind of attention he'd once reserved for crime scenes. Those aren't regular dogs, he said quietly to Linda. Look at those collars. That's tactical gear. Linda was already pulling out her phone. I'm calling Doctor Sarah. She'll meet us at her clinic. Mom, Tommy called up. The mom dog showed me something. There are these computer things like USB drives. She wanted me to see them. Robert and Linda exchanged a look over the edge of the tank. Don't touch them, Robert said carefully. Just leave them where they are for now. But Tommy had already gathered them up, tucking them carefully into his backpack. She gave them to me, he said, with the stubborn certainty that only a 5-year-old could manage. She pushed them to me. She wants me to have them. Emma returned with the ladder, and Robert lowered it carefully into the tank. Tommy, can you climb up? Tommy looked at the dogs. The mother was watching him with those intelligent eyes, and he knew, somehow he just knew, that she understood every word being said. What about them? I'm coming down, Robert said, already swinging onto the ladder despite Linda's protests. We'll get them out. Don't worry. Grandpa Robert's feet had barely touched the bottom when the mother dog did something that made everyone freeze. She struggled to her feet, balancing on 3 legs, and limped over to Robert. Then, with great effort, she performed what could only be described as a military-style alert stance, her body rigid despite the pain she must have been in. Robert's face went pale. Jesus Christ, he whispered. These are military working dogs. How do you know? Linda called down. Because I've seen that stance before, during joint operations with the military police. Robert knelt beside the mother dog, his hands gentle as he examined her collar. There's a service number here. These dogs are government property. But they're hurt, Tommy protested. We can't just... We're not leaving them, Robert assured him. But this just got a lot more complicated. The younger dog had been watching all of this with wary eyes, but when Robert reached for the mother dog to lift her, it burst into action. Not aggressive exactly, but positioning itself between Robert and its injured companion. A low, warning growl rumbling in its chest. It's okay, Tommy said, moving to the younger dog's side. He's trying to help. Like I was trying to help. The younger dog looked at Tommy, then at its mother, then back at Tommy. Something passed between them, some kind of understanding that transcended words. The dog stepped aside, but stayed close, ready to intervene if needed. Smart dogs, Robert muttered as he carefully lifted the injured mother. She had to weigh at least 70 pounds, but adrenaline and determination gave him the strength he needed. Tommy, you go up first, then I'll hand her up to your mother and come back for the other one. Tommy didn't want to leave, but he knew arguing would only slow things down. He climbed the ladder quickly, his small body moving with the agility that only children possess. At the top, his mother grabbed him in a fierce hug. Don't you ever scare me like that again, she whispered into his hair. They needed help, Tommy said again, because really, what else was there to say? It took all 4 of them working together to get both dogs out of the tank. The mother dog, despite her pain, remained remarkably calm, as if she understood that these humans were trying to help. The younger dog was more skittish, but followed Tommy's voice, letting him guide it up while Robert supported it from below. By the time they had both dogs in the back of Robert's truck, the sun was setting properly, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. The mother dog was lying on an old blanket Robert kept in his truck, her breathing labored but steady. The younger dog pressed against her side, whimpering softly. We need to get them to doctor. Sarah now, Linda said, her nurse's training taking over. That leg needs immediate attention, and they're both severely dehydrated. I'll drive, Robert said. But before he could move, Tommy tugged on his sleeve. Grandpa, look. Tommy pulled out the USB drives from his backpack. In the dying light, they could all see that these weren't normal storage devices. They were military grade, sealed in waterproof cases with serial numbers etched into the metal. Robert took one carefully, turning it over in his hands. Where did these come from? The mom dog had them, Tommy explained. She was hiding them under some cloth. She wanted me to take them. I know she did. Robert's expression was grim. We need to be very careful here. Military dogs don't just end up in abandoned water tanks by accident. Something's wrong. Something's very wrong. As they drove toward town, Tommy sat in the back seat with Emma, but his attention was entirely on the dogs. He'd reached through the window that connected the cab to the truck bed, and his small hand was resting on the mother dog's head. She'd stopped whimpering the moment he touched her. "You're going to be okay," he whispered. "I promise you're going to be okay." Linda glanced in the rearview mirror at her son, and her heart clenched. He looked so much like Marcus in that moment. The same determined set to his jaw, the same instinct to help, no matter the cost. It had been 6 months since they'd lost Marcus in that warehouse fire, 6 months since Tommy had last smiled properly. But looking at him now, comforting those injured dogs, she saw a flicker of the boy he used to be. "Mom," Emma said quietly, "Tommy was really brave. Like, really brave. He didn't even hesitate." "I know," Linda said softly. "He's his father's son." Dr. Sarah's veterinary clinic was officially closed, but she was waiting for them in the parking lot, already in her scrubs. The moment she saw the dogs, her professional demeanor took over. "Bring them straight to surgery," she ordered. "The leg needs immediate attention." As they carried the mother dog in, she suddenly started struggling, trying to look back at the truck where the younger dog remained. "Bring them both, Doctor," Sarah said quickly. "They need to stay together." The stress of separation could make things worse. Tommy stayed right beside the dogs as doctor. Sarah worked. She'd tried to make him wait outside, but the mother dog had become agitated the moment Tommy moved away, her heart rate spiking dangerously. "It's like she's bonded with him, Doctor," Sarah muttered, preparing an IV line. "I've never seen anything like it." "They're military dogs," Robert explained. "We found them in an abandoned water tank on the Henderson property." Dr. Sarah's hands paused for just a moment. "Military? You're sure?" "Pretty sure. They have tactical collars and service numbers." Dr. Sarah continued her work, but Tommy noticed her hands were shaking slightly now. "We need to report this. Military working dogs don't just get abandoned. They're worth tens of thousands of dollars, and the military tracks them carefully." "Can you help them first?" Tommy asked, his voice small but firm. "They're hurt really bad." Dr. Sarah's expression softened as she looked at the little boy who refused to leave the injured dog's side. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll fix them up first, then figure out the rest." As she worked to stabilize the mother dog's leg, Tommy sang softly, the same lullaby his father used to sing to him when he was scared. It was a simple melody, something about stars, watching over sleeping children, but the effect on both dogs was immediate. They calmed, their breathing becoming more regular. "That's beautiful, Doctor," Sarah said softly. "What song is that?" "Dad taught it to me," Tommy said. "He said it was magic, that it could make anything better." Linda had to turn away then, pretending to check her phone so no one would see her tears. Marcus had sung that song to both children since they were babies. Hearing it now, in Tommy's small voice, was like having Marcus in the room with them. Robert, meanwhile, had stepped outside to make a phone call. He still had contacts from his years on the force, people who might be able to tell him more about military working dogs and how 2 of them might have ended up abandoned and injured. But every call led to the same response. Be careful, don't trust anyone, and whatever you do, don't plug those USB drives into any computer. When he came back inside, Doctor, Sarah was finishing up with the mother dog. "The leg is set," she reported. "She'll need surgery to properly repair it, but she's stable for now." Both dogs are severely dehydrated and malnourished. They've been in that tank for at least 3 days, maybe longer. "How did they survive?" Emma asked. "The younger one isn't as badly injured, Doctor," Sarah explained. "Just cuts and bruises. My guess is it was going out to find food and water, then coming back. But it couldn't get the mother out, and it wouldn't leave her. They're family," Tommy said with certainty. "They protect each other." Dr. Sarah nodded. "The younger one is male, probably the mother's pup from a previous litter. They've been trained together. You can see it in how they move, how they respond to each other." "What about identification?" Robert asked. "Microchips?" Dr. Sarah scanned both dogs. "They have chips, but they're encrypted. Military grade. I can't access the information without proper authorization codes." "So, we don't know who they belong to?" "Not yet." Dr. Sarah looked troubled. "But someone will come looking for them." Dogs like this don't just disappear without someone noticing." As if in response to her words, the mother dog's eyes snapped open. She looked directly at Tommy, then at his backpack, where the USB drives were hidden. She made a soft whining sound, her paw moving slightly toward the bag. "She wants you to keep them safe," Tommy said, with the absolute certainty that only children possess. "She's trusting us with something important." Robert and Linda exchanged worried looks. Whatever those drives contained, it was important enough that an injured military dog had protected them even while trapped and dying. Important enough that someone had apparently tried to make these dogs disappear. "We should go to the police," Linda said. "No." Robert's response was immediate and firm. "Not yet. Not until we know more. If these dogs were deliberately abandoned, if someone tried to get rid of them, then we need to be very careful about who we trust." "But Grandpa," Emma protested, "we can't just keep military dogs. That's like illegal, isn't it?" "We're not keeping them," Robert said carefully. "We're providing emergency medical care to injured animals. That's perfectly legal, but until we know why they were in that tank, we need to be smart about this." Dr. Sarah had been listening to all of this while checking the younger dog's injuries. "They can stay here tonight," she offered. "I have secure kennels in the back, but Robert's right. We need to be careful. In my experience, military dogs don't end up abandoned by accident. Someone wanted these dogs to disappear." "But why?" Tommy asked, his hand still resting protectively on the mother dog's head. "That's what we need to find out," Robert said grimly. As they prepared to leave the clinic, Tommy refused to go. "They'll be scared alone," he insisted. "They need someone to stay with them." "Tommy, honey, you need to come home," Linda said gently. "You need dinner and a bath and I'll stay." Everyone turned to look at Emma in surprise. The 12-year-old was standing by the kennels, her jaw set in an expression that was pure Mitchell stubbornness. "Emma," Linda began. "Tommy's right," Emma interrupted. "They're scared and hurt and alone. Someone should stay with them. I've got my phone. I'll call if anything happens." Dr. Sarah looked between the two children, then at the dogs who were watching this exchange with what could only be described as hopeful expressions. "I suppose I could set up a cot in here. I was planning to stay anyway to monitor them through the night." "Then it's settled," Emma said, using the tone she'd learned from watching their mother end discussions at the hospital. "Tommy and I will stay." Linda wanted to protest, but looking at her children, at the determination in their faces and the way the dogs seemed to calm in their presence, she found herself nodding. "Fine, but you call me every hour, and if anything seems wrong, you call Grandpa immediately." As the adults discussed logistics, Tommy curled up on the floor next to the mother dog's kennel. She'd managed to push her nose through the bars, and he was gently stroking it. "I'm going to call you Luna," he whispered, "because Dad said the moon watches over everyone at night, keeping them safe. And you—" He looked at the younger dog. "You're Scout, because you were brave enough to go get help even when you were scared." Luna's tail moved slightly, the first real wag any of them had seen. Scout, hearing his new name, came closer to the bars of his own kennel, his eyes fixed on Tommy. "We're going to find out what happened to you," Tommy promised them, "and we're going to keep you safe. Dad always said that's what families do. They keep each other safe." Robert had been standing by the door, ostensibly checking his phone, but really watching his grandson with these mysterious dogs. There was something happening here, something that went beyond a simple rescue. The way the dogs responded to Tommy, the USB drives, the deliberate abandonment, it all pointed to something bigger and more dangerous than any of them realized. His phone buzzed with a text from one of his old contacts. "Stop digging. You don't want to know what you're about to find." Robert deleted the message immediately, but the warning had come too late. They were already involved, whether they wanted to be or not. 2 injured military dogs had been left to die, and someone had gone to great lengths to make sure they wouldn't be found. But they hadn't counted on Tommy Mitchell, a 5-year-old boy with his father's brave heart and his mother's stubborn streak. They hadn't counted on a child who would climb into a 15-foot tank without hesitation because someone needed help. As Robert watched Tommy singing softly to Luna, his small hand never leaving her nose, he made a decision. Whatever secrets these dogs were carrying, whatever danger might come from protecting them, they were going to see this through. It's what Marcus would have done. It's what heroes do. Grandpa, Tommy called softly, do you think Dad would be proud that I helped them? Robert had to clear his throat before answering. I think your dad would be so proud he'd burst, kiddo. You did exactly what he would have done. Tommy smiled then, the first real smile anyone had seen from him in 6 months. Then I did the right thing. You did the right thing, Robert confirmed. Dr. Sarah emerged from her supply room with blankets and pillows. If we're having a sleepover, we might as well be comfortable. She looked at the dogs, then at the children, and something in her expression softened. You know, in all my years as a vet, I've never seen dogs respond to anyone the way these two respond to your kids. Tommy's special, Linda said simply. He always has been. Marcus used to say Tommy could make friends with a thunderstorm if he tried hard enough. It's more than that, Doctor, Sarah said thoughtfully. These dogs are trained to be selective, to bond with one handler. But they've chosen Tommy, both of them. That's not supposed to happen. Robert's detective instincts were prickling. What do you mean? Military working dogs, especially ones with this level of training, they're conditioned from puppies to work with specific handlers. They don't just transfer that loyalty to random civilians, especially not to children. But look at them. They all turn to look. Luna, despite her injuries and the pain medication, was watching Tommy with an intensity that was almost human. Scout had moved as close to Tommy as his kennel would allow, his entire body oriented toward the boy. It's like they were waiting for him, Doctor, Sarah said softly. Like they knew he would come. The words hung in the air, heavy with implications none of them fully understood yet. Outside, the October night had grown cold, and somewhere in the darkness, forces were already moving in response to the dog's discovery. Phone calls were being made, files were being pulled, and decisions were being made about how to handle this unexpected complication. But inside the warm clinic, Tommy Mitchell sat between two injured German shepherds, singing his father's lullaby and promising them that everything would be okay. He didn't know about the USB drive's contents yet. He didn't know about the danger that was coming. All he knew was that Luna and Scout needed him, and he wasn't going to let them down. We should check the USB drives, Robert said quietly to Linda. We need to know what we're dealing with. Not here, Doctor, Sarah interjected quickly. If they're really military, they could have tracking software. The moment you plug them in, someone could know exactly where they are. Then what do we do? Robert thought for a moment. I know someone. Someone who used to work in military intelligence, completely off the grid now. Lives about 2 hours from here. If anyone can safely check those drives, it's him. Can we trust him? Linda asked. With my life, Robert said firmly, and more importantly, with theirs. He nodded toward his grandchildren. As they continued planning in hushed voices, Tommy had fallen asleep on the floor, his hands still stretched through the kennel bars, touching Luna's nose. Emma had covered him with a blanket and was now sitting beside him, keeping watch like a guardian angel. They saved each other, she said suddenly, not looking at the adults. The dogs and Tommy. They saved each other. Linda moved to sit beside her daughter, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. What do you mean, sweetheart? Tommy hasn't been himself since Dad died. He hasn't really smiled, hasn't wanted to play. But today, when he saw those dogs needed help, it was like the old Tommy came back. And the dogs, they were dying in that tank. They saved each other. It was such a profound observation from a 12-year-old that the adults fell silent. Emma was right. In that abandoned water tank, something had happened that went beyond a simple rescue. Broken souls had found each other, and in that finding, began to heal. We're keeping them, aren't we? Emma asked, though it wasn't really a question. Whatever happens, we're not letting anyone take them away from Tommy. Linda and Robert exchanged a look. They both knew it wouldn't be that simple. Military dogs weren't pets. They were government property. There would be paperwork, investigations, and possibly legal battles. But looking at Tommy sleeping peacefully for the first time in months, his hand never leaving Luna's nose, they both came to the same conclusion. We're keeping them, Robert said firmly. One way or another, we're keeping them. Dr. Sarah had been checking Luna's vitals again and suddenly froze. There's something else, she said slowly. Luna, she's been pregnant recently. Very recently. She's still producing milk. Everyone turned to stare at her. Puppies? Linda asked. "Where are her puppies?" Scout suddenly whined, a high, mournful sound that made everyone's blood run cold. He pawed at his kennel door, then looked directly at Robert and performed that same military alert stance Luna had done earlier. "Oh my God," Emma whispered. "He's trying to tell us something. There are puppies somewhere, aren't there? And they're still out there?" The room fell silent except for Scout's continued whining. Luna, despite her sedation, had started to struggle, trying to get up, her eyes wild with a mother's panic. "The tank," Tommy said, his eyes snapping open though he'd seemed to be deeply asleep. "We have to go back to the tank. That's what she was trying to tell me. That's why she gave me the drives. She was trading them for help finding her puppies." "Tommy, that's—" Linda began, but Robert was already grabbing his keys. "He's right. Scout wasn't just going for food and water. He was going somewhere specific, somewhere he couldn't take Luna because of her injury." He looked at Dr. Sarah. "Can you sedate her more? Keep her calm?" "I can try, but maternal instinct is stronger than most drugs. She knows her puppies are out there. Then we need to find them fast." Robert looked at his watch. It had been 3 hours since they'd rescued Luna and Scout. If there were puppies out there, exposed to the October cold without their mother. "I'm coming," Tommy said, already standing up. "Absolutely not," Linda said firmly. "It's dangerous, it's dark, and—" "They need me," Tommy interrupted, with that quiet certainty that made him sound so much older than 5. "Luna trusts me. Scout trusts me. The puppies will too." Before anyone could argue further, Scout did something extraordinary. He walked to his kennel door, sat perfectly at attention, and then looked directly at Tommy and barked twice. Short, sharp barks that sounded almost like commands. "He's asking me to come," Tommy said. "He needs me to come." Dr. Sarah looked at the dog in amazement. That's trained behavior. He's literally requesting Tommy's assistance." Robert made a decision that would have seemed insane to him just hours ago. "Tommy comes, but he stays with me every second, and the moment I say we leave, we leave. No arguments." Linda wanted to protest, but she could see the same thing everyone else could. These dogs had chosen Tommy for reasons none of them fully understood, and they needed him now. "I'm coming too," Emma said firmly. "Emma, I'm not letting Tommy go without me. We're a team. We've always been a team." And so, against all reasonable judgment, they prepared for a nighttime rescue mission. Dr. Sarah would stay with Luna, keeping her sedated and stable. Linda would drive, Robert would provide security, and the children would, well, they would do what they'd been doing all along. They would be the bridge between human and animal, the pure hearts that these dogs had, recognized and trusted. As they loaded into Robert's truck, Scout leading the way, with an urgency that made everyone nervous, Tommy held tight to his backpack with the USB drives. Whatever secrets they contained, they were important enough that Luna had protected them even while dying. Important enough that someone had tried to eliminate these dogs to keep those secrets buried. But first, they had puppies to find. Somewhere in the cold October night, Luna's babies were waiting, and time was running out. The truck's headlights cut through the darkness as they raced back toward the Henderson farm, Scout sitting in the truck bed, his nose pointed forward like a compass needle finding true north. Tommy pressed his face against the back window, watching the dog's every movement, and when Scout's body tensed, Tommy knew they were close. "He's getting excited," Tommy called out. "We're almost there." Robert pulled the truck to a stop near the water tank, and before anyone could grab him, Scout had leaped from the truck bed, his injured paws hitting the ground with a determination that made everyone wince. But he didn't head for the tank. Instead, he ran toward the old barn, about 50 yards away, barking with an urgency that sent chills down everyone's spine. "The barn," Emma breathed. "Of course." She couldn't keep them in the tank. She must have hidden them before she got trapped. They ran after Scout, their flashlights bobbing in the darkness like fireflies. The barn door hung crooked on its hinges, and Scout squeezed through without hesitation. From inside came the sound that made Linda's maternal heart clench, the weak, desperate crying of puppies. Tommy was through the door before anyone could stop him, his small body following Scout into the darkness. "I found them!" His voice came back, high with excitement and worry. "But something's wrong!" Robert and Linda pushed through the door, their flashlights revealing a scene that broke their hearts. In the far corner of the barn, hidden behind old hay bales, were 3 German Shepherd puppies, maybe 4 weeks old. They were huddled together for warmth, their tiny bodies shaking. But it was what was around them that made Robert's blood run cold. The puppies were in a makeshift den, carefully constructed with blankets, old jackets, and what looked like military gear. Someone had been caring for these puppies, someone who knew they'd need protection, and that someone was lying very still just a few feet away. "Don't look," Robert said quickly, trying to shield the children's view, but it was too late. A man in military fatigues lay motionless on the barn floor, his body positioned between the puppies and the door like a final act of protection. Even in death, he'd been guarding them. "Is he—" Linda couldn't finish the sentence. Robert knelt beside the man, checking for a pulse he knew he wouldn't find. The body was cold, had been for at least 2 days. There were no visible wounds, but Robert's trained eye caught the signs, the slightly blue tinge to the lips, the peaceful expression, poison, most likely. Something quick. "Kids, focus on the puppies," Robert said firmly. "They need help now." Tommy was already gathering the puppies into his arms, their tiny bodies barely filling his small embrace. They were weak but alive, their cries becoming stronger as they felt human warmth. Scout was beside him, licking each puppy frantically, checking them over with the attention of a worried uncle. "They're so cold," Tommy said, tears streaming down his face. "And hungry. They're so hungry." Emma had found a military backpack near the man's body. Inside were cans of dog formula, bottles, and detailed notes about feeding schedules. "He was taking care of them," she said softly. "This man was taking care of them after Luna got trapped." Linda was already wrapping the puppies in her jacket, her nurse's training taking over. "We need to get them warm immediately. They're hypothermic and severely dehydrated." As Robert helped gather the puppies, his foot hit something under the hay. Another USB drive, this one attached to a set of military dog tags. He pocketed them quickly, adding to their growing collection of mysteries. "Who was he?" Tommy asked, looking at the still figure with the innocent directness of childhood. Robert checked the man's tags. "Sergeant Daniel Foster, K9 unit." He looked at Scout, who had moved to sit beside the sergeant's body, his head lowered in what could only be described as mourning. He was their handler, their real handler. "Then why—" Emma started, but the sound of engines in the distance cut her off. Multiple engines, getting closer. "We need to go," Robert said urgently. "Now!" They ran for the truck, Tommy clutching the puppies, Scout right beside him. Linda drove while Robert watched the mirrors, his hand on his phone ready to call for help. But the vehicles, 3 black SUVs, didn't follow them. Instead, they headed straight for the barn. "They're not after us," Robert said slowly. "They're after him, after the sergeant." "But how did they know?" Linda asked, taking a sharp turn onto a back road. "The same way they knew to put Luna and Scout in that tank," Robert said grimly. "Someone's been watching. Someone's been waiting." They made it back to the clinic in record time. Dr. Sarah took one look at the puppies and immediately went into emergency mode. "Get them under the heat lamps. Tommy, you hold them while I prepare formula. They need nutrients immediately." Luna must have sensed her babies were near because she started struggling against the sedation, her whines becoming desperate cries. Dr. Sarah looked torn between keeping her sedated for her own safety and letting her see her puppies. "Let her see them," Tommy said. "Just for a minute. She needs to know they're safe. Against her better judgment, doctor." Sarah reduced the sedation slightly. Luna's eyes fluttered open, and when Tommy brought the puppies close to the kennel, the transformation in her was immediate. Her tail wagged weakly, and she made soft, encouraging sounds that had the puppies crying even louder, recognizing their mother's voice. "We saved them, Luna," Tommy whispered. "All 3 of them. They're safe now." Luna looked at Tommy then, with such human gratitude that everyone in the room felt it. She touched her nose to his hand through the bars, then closed her eyes, finally able to rest, knowing her babies were safe. While Dr. Sarah and Linda worked on the puppies, Robert stepped outside to examine the new USB drive and dog tags. The tags belonged to Sergeant Foster, but there was another set attached, these belonging to Captain Marcus Webb, status KIA. Robert's hands shook slightly. Marcus Webb, the same first name as his son. It felt like a sign, though of what, he couldn't say. His phone rang, unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Mr. Mitchell?" The voice was female, professional, with an underlying tension. "My name is Agent Diana Chen, FBI. I believe you found something that belongs to us." "I don't know what you're talking about," Robert said carefully. "Mr. Mitchell, I know you have the dogs, I know you have the drives, and I know you found Sergeant Foster. What you don't know is that you're all in grave danger." "From who?" "From the people who killed Foster and tried to kill those dogs. Mr. Mitchell, those USB drives contain evidence of a child trafficking ring operating under the cover of private military contractors. Foster and Webb were gathering evidence when they were discovered. Webb was killed 2 weeks ago. Foster went into hiding with the dogs and the evidence." Robert's mind raced. "Why should I trust you?" "Because in about 10 minutes, the men who were at the barn are going to figure out that Foster moved the puppies before he died. They're going to check veterinary clinics. And when they find you," she paused, "they don't leave witnesses, Mr. Mitchell, not even children." "What do you want?" "I want to help. I've been tracking this case for 2 years. Foster was my informant. Those dogs aren't just military animals. They're specially trained to detect trafficked children. Luna can smell the specific combination of drugs used to sedate victims. That's why they wanted her dead." Robert looked through the clinic window at his grandchildren, both now helping to bottle feed the puppies while Scout stood guard. "Where are you?" 20 minutes out. "But Mr. Mitchell, you need to move now. Take the dogs, take the evidence, and get somewhere safe. I'll send you coordinates." "How do I know this isn't a trap?" "You don't," Diana said simply. "But look at your phone. I'm sending you something." A photo appeared on his screen. It showed Agent Diana Chen's FBI credentials, but more importantly, it showed her with Sergeant Foster and another man in military uniform. They were standing with Luna and Scout, all of them looking happy and proud. "That was taken 6 months ago," Diana said. "When we first started this operation, Foster trusted me. I'm asking you to do the same." Robert made a decision. "Send the coordinates." He rushed back inside. "We need to move. Now." Linda looked up from feeding a puppy. "What?" "Why?" "No time to explain. Everyone in the truck. Bring the dogs, all of them." Dr. Sarah started to protest, but something in Robert's expression stopped her. "Luna can't be moved safely." "She has to be. They're coming." The urgency in his voice got everyone moving. Dr. Sarah prepared a portable IV for Luna, while Robert and Linda carefully lifted her onto a stretcher. Tommy carried the puppies in a box lined with heating pads, Emma helping Scout, who was still limping from his own injuries. They were loading everything into Dr. Sarah's van when headlights appeared at the end of the street. "Go, go, go!" Robert shouted. Dr. Sarah drove, while Robert navigated using the coordinates Diana had sent. They led to an abandoned fire station 15 miles outside of town, ironically appropriate, given Marcus's profession. Linda held Tommy and Emma in the back, the box of puppies between them. Scout lay across their laps, his body tense and alert. Luna was on the stretcher beside them, drifting in and out of consciousness, but aware enough to smell her puppies nearby. "Mom, I'm scared," Emma admitted quietly. "Me too, baby," Linda said, pulling her closer. "But we're together. That's what matters." "Dad would know what to do," Tommy said softly, his hand resting on Scout's head. "Your dad would do exactly what we're doing," Linda said firmly. "He'd protect his family and help those who couldn't help themselves." The fire station looked deserted when they arrived, but as their van pulled in, a door opened and a woman stepped out. Asian, mid-30s, wearing FBI tactical gear. She approached with her hands visible, no sudden movements. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Agent Chen." Robert studied her carefully. In person, she looked tired, stressed, but her eyes were kind. "You came alone?" "My team is securing the perimeter. We have maybe an hour before they track us here." She looked at the van where Tommy's face was pressed against the window. "These the kids who found them?" "My grandchildren." Diana's expression softened. "Brave kids?" Foster would have been grateful. "You knew him well?" "He was a good man. Tried to do the right thing." She looked at Luna through the van window. "May I?" Robert nodded, and Diana approached the van slowly. The moment Luna saw her, her tail wagged weakly. Recognition. "Hello, beautiful girl," Diana said softly. "I'm so sorry this happened to you." Tommy had climbed out of the van, still holding one of the puppies. "You know Luna?" Diana knelt to his level. I do. She's a very special dog. She saved a lot of children." "How?" Diana looked at Robert, who nodded permission to continue. "Luna can find children who are in trouble. Bad people sometimes take children away from their families. Luna helps us find them and bring them home." Tommy's eyes widened. "Like a superhero dog?" "Exactly like that. Is that why the bad people wanted to hurt her? Because she stops them?" Diana's voice was gentle but honest. "Yes, that's why." Tommy held the puppy tighter. "Well, they can't have her. Or Scout. Or the puppies. They're ours now. We saved them." "Yes, you did," Diana agreed. "And that was very brave." While Diana examined the dogs and checked on their injuries, Robert pulled her aside. "The USB drives. What's really on them?" Diana's expression darkened. "Everything. Financial records, shipping manifests, photos, videos." Foster and Webb spent months gathering evidence. There's enough there to take down the entire operation. "How big is this operation?" "Big. International. They use private military contractors as cover, moving equipment that's actually trafficked children. Luna and Scout were trained to inspect shipments, but they started alerting to the wrong containers. That's when Foster realized what was happening. And they killed Webb for it? Made it look like a training accident. Foster knew he was next, so he ran with the dogs and the evidence. He was supposed to meet me 3 days ago. Robert thought about the sergeant's body in the barn, how he'd positioned himself to protect the puppies even in death. He was poisoned. They have someone on the inside, someone who knew our protocols, our safe houses. That's why Foster went completely dark. So what now? Diana looked at the van where Linda was helping Doctor. Sarah changed Luna's bandages while Tommy and Emma fed the puppies. "Now we protect your family while I get this evidence to the right people. But Mr. Mitchell, they won't stop coming. These people have too much to lose." "Then we stop them first," Robert said, with the determination of a man who'd spent 30 years putting criminals away. Diana studied him. "You were a cop. Detective? Retired." "Not anymore," Diana said. "I'm deputizing you as a special consultant. Congratulations, you're back on the job." Before Robert could respond, Scout started barking. Not his normal bark, but the sharp, aggressive sound of a military dog detecting a threat. "They found us," Diana said, pulling out her phone. "My team says 3 vehicles approaching from the east." "We can't run, Doctor," Sarah said from the van. "Luna won't survive another move." Diana made a decision. "Then we don't run. We make our stand here." She opened the back of her SUV, revealing tactical equipment and weapons. "Mr. Mitchell, I assume you still know how to use one of these?" She held out a shotgun. "I can manage." "Dr. Sarah, take the children to the basement. There's an old bunker down there from the Cold War. Lock yourselves in." "I'm not leaving Luna," Tommy said stubbornly. "Tommy," Linda started. "No! I promised her I'd keep her safe. I promised." Scout moved to stand beside Tommy, his stance making his position clear. Where the boy went, he went. Diana looked at the pair, a 5-year-old boy and an injured military dog ready to face whatever came. Foster always said Luna was the best judge of character he'd ever met. "She chose you for a reason, didn't she?" Tommy nodded solemnly. "Then you stay with her. But you do exactly what I say when I say it. Deal?" "Deal." They moved quickly, Linda, Emma, and Doctor. Sarah took the puppies to the basement, while Tommy stayed with Luna in the van, Scout standing guard. Robert and Diana took defensive positions as the sound of engines grew closer. "You know," Diana said, checking her weapon, "this isn't how I planned this going." "Plans never survive first contact," Robert replied, remembering his old training. Foster used to say that. The vehicles pulled up outside, their headlights flooding the fire station with harsh white light. Doors opened, and men in tactical gear emerged. Robert counted at least 8. A voice called out through a megaphone. "Agent Chen, we know you're in there. Send out the dogs and the drives, and everyone walks away." Diana laughed bitterly. "Like hell," she called back. "I've got a better idea. You surrender now, and I'll make sure you get comfortable cells." "You're outgunned and outmanned, Agent. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You want to explain to your boss how you killed an FBI agent and a family with children? That's going to be hard to cover up." There was silence for a moment. Then, "You have 5 minutes to decide." Diana turned to Robert. They're going to breach. Multiple entry points. We can't hold them all. Then we don't try, Robert said. We channel them. Make them come through the path we choose. They worked quickly, barricading all but one entrance, creating a fatal funnel that would force the attackers into a narrow approach. It was the best they could do with limited resources. 4 minutes passed. Then Scout did something unexpected. He left his post by the van and walked to the main entrance, sitting down in perfect military attention. He barked once, sharp and clear. "What's he doing?" Robert asked. Diana's eyes widened. "He's calling them out. It's a challenge protocol. Military dogs do it to identify themselves to other handlers." From outside came an answering bark, then another. "They brought their own dogs," Diana muttered. "This complicates things." But Scout wasn't done. He barked again, this time in a specific pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. That's SOS, Robert said in amazement. The dogs outside responded with agitated barking, and they heard men shouting, trying to control them. "He's turning their dogs against them," Diana said. "He's telling them something's wrong." The 5 minutes were up. They heard movement outside, men getting into position. Robert gripped the shotgun tighter, preparing for the worst. Then Tommy's voice rang out from the van, clear and strong. He was singing. That same lullaby his father had taught him, his young voice carrying through the night air. The effect was immediate. The barking stopped. Everything stopped. "What's happening?" Robert whispered. Diana was staring at the van in amazement. "Luna's responding." Look. Despite her injuries, Luna had managed to pull herself partially up, and she was howling. Not a normal howl, but something musical, harmonizing with Tommy's song. Scout joined in, and from the basement, they could hear the puppies adding their tiny voices. It was haunting, beautiful, and absolutely heartbreaking. "Hold fire!" someone shouted from outside. "What the hell is that?" Tommy kept singing, his voice never wavering. Luna kept howling, putting every ounce of her remaining strength into the sound. It was a mother's lament, a warrior's last stand, and a child's pure faith all rolled into one impossible moment. Then, from outside, one of the other dogs began to howl along. Then, another. "The dogs won't fight," someone said, frustration clear in his voice. "They're refusing commands." Diana looked at Robert with something like hope. "It's working. Whatever Tommy's doing, it's working." But the reprieve was temporary. They heard harsh commands, the sound of dogs being forcibly removed, and then the voice on the megaphone again, colder now. "Touching. But this ends now." The first tear gas canister crashed through a window, then another. "Masks!" Diana shouted, pulling gas masks from her tactical bag. But there weren't enough, not for everyone. Robert made a decision. He grabbed a mask and ran to the van, pressing it over Tommy's face. "Keep singing," he said through the smoke. "No matter what, keep singing." Tommy's muffled voice continued, barely audible now, but still there. Luna tried to howl but began coughing from the gas. Scout pressed himself against the van, his eyes streaming but refusing to leave his post. Through the smoke, Robert saw figures approaching. He raised the shotgun, but his eyes were burning, his vision blurred. Then suddenly new lights flooded the area. Helicopters, multiple helicopters. "FBI, stand down. All units stand down." Diana's backup had arrived. Finally, the next few minutes were chaos. Federal agents swarmed the building. The attackers tried to flee. Gunfire erupted briefly before the overwhelming federal presence ended any resistance. Robert found himself on his knees, gasping for clean air as the gas dispersed. His first thought was for Tommy. The boy was still in the van, the mask protecting him from the worst of the gas. He was holding Luna's head in his lap, still singing softly even though the danger had passed. The great dog's breathing was labored, her body finally succumbing to the accumulated trauma of the past days. "Luna, please," Tommy whispered between verses. "Please don't go. I promise to keep you safe." Dr. Sarah appeared through the smoke like an angel, her medical bag in hand. She took one look at Luna and immediately began working, but her expression told Robert everything. "She's going into shock, doctor," Sarah said quietly. "Her body can't take any more." "Do something," Tommy cried. "Please!" Dr. Sarah worked frantically, administering medications, trying to stabilize the failing dog. Linda and Emma emerged from the basement with the puppies, all of them safe but shaken. Scout limped to Luna's side, touching his nose to hers. She opened her eyes one last time, looking at her puppies, at Scout, and finally at Tommy. Her tail moved once, the smallest wag, and then her eyes closed. "No," Tommy sobbed, burying his face in her fur. "No, you can't leave! I saved you! I saved you!" But even as he cried, Luna's breathing grew steadier, not stopping, but stabilizing. Dr. Sarah looked at her instruments in amazement. She's fighting. Her heart rate is improving. Tommy kept his face pressed against Luna's fur, whispering to her. "Dad said heroes don't give up. You're a hero, Luna. Heroes don't give up." Whether it was the medical intervention, Tommy's voice, or just the iron will of a mother who refused to leave her puppies, Luna held on. Hour by hour, breath by breath, she held on. Diana approached Robert as the scene was being processed. "The men we arrested are already talking. They're giving up everyone to save themselves. This trafficking ring is finished." "And the dogs?" Diana looked at Tommy, who hadn't left Luna's side. "Officially, they're military property. But given the circumstances and the fact that their handlers are deceased," she paused, "I think I can make a case for them being retired to a good home. A hero's home. The puppies, too. They were never officially registered. As far as the military is concerned, they don't exist." Robert felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Tommy won't let them go anyway." "I know," Diana said with a small smile. "Foster would have liked that. He always said Luna deserved a family who would love her, not just use her abilities." As dawn broke over the fire station, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Luna opened her eyes properly for the first time. Tommy was still there, had been there all night, his small hand never leaving her fur. "Hi," he whispered. "You came back." Luna's tail wagged, stronger this time. She looked around, taking in her puppies nursing nearby, Scout standing guard, and this small boy who had refused to give up on her. "We need to give you all new names," Tommy said, "for your new life. Luna and Scout can be your working names, but you need family names too." Emma, who had been helping with the puppies, suggested, "How about Hope for Luna, because she gave us hope when we needed it most." Tommy nodded solemnly. "Luna Hope, and Scout can be Courage, Scout Courage." "What about the puppies?" Linda asked, exhausted but smiling at her children's resilience. Tommy looked at each tiny face. "Faith, grace, and valor. Because that's what Dad always said we needed. Faith to believe, grace to forgive, and valor to do what's right." Robert had to turn away to hide his tears. Marcus would have been so proud of his children. Over the next weeks, life slowly returned to something resembling normal. The FBI investigation made national news, with dozens of children rescued from trafficking operations across 3 countries. Diana became a regular visitor, helping with the legal process of officially adopting the dogs. Luna, Hope, recovered slowly but steadily. Her leg would always have a slight limp, but she could walk, even run when Tommy threw a ball. Scout, Courage, appointed himself the family guardian, patrolling the yard and always positioning himself between the children and any perceived threat. The puppies grew rapidly, their personalities emerging. Faith was gentle and calm like her mother. Grace was playful and mischievous. Valor was bold and protective like Scout. But it was the bond between Tommy and Hope that amazed everyone. They were inseparable. Hope slept by his bed, walked him to school, and waited by the window for him to come home. Tommy, in return, learned everything he could about German shepherds, about military dogs, about training and care. "She's teaching him to heal," Linda told Robert one evening, as they watched Tommy and Hope in the backyard, the boy reading a book aloud while the dog listened with apparent interest. "And he's teaching her that not all humans are dangerous." "They saved each other," Robert agreed. One day, 3 months after the rescue, Diana arrived with unexpected news and an unexpected visitor. A man in a wheelchair, wearing a military uniform covered in medals. Captain Marcus Webb, alive, though paralyzed from the waist down. "You're the family that saved my partner's dogs," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Tommy approached slowly, Hope by his side. "You knew Sergeant Foster? He was my best friend. We served together for 10 years. Webb looked at Hope and Scout, tears flowing freely. I thought I'd never see them again. After my accident, they told me the dogs had been destroyed. Someone lied, Diana said grimly. Webb was targeted because he wouldn't stop investigating. The attack on him was meant to be fatal. Webb reached out to Hope, who sniffed his hand carefully, then began wagging her tail in recognition. Hello, beautiful girl. I'm so sorry for what happened to you. He turned to Tommy. Young man, Daniel Foster would have been honored to know you cared for his dogs. You did what trained soldiers couldn't do. You kept them safe. We all did, Tommy said, gesturing to his family. Mom and Grandpa and Emma and Doctor. Sarah. Even the puppies helped by being brave. Webb smiled through his tears. Foster always said Luna was the best judge of character he'd ever met. She chose well. He reached into his bag and pulled out a wooden box. These were Daniel's. He would have wanted the person caring for his dogs to have them. Inside were military medals, photos of Foster with the dogs, and a letter. Tommy couldn't read all the words yet, but Linda read it to him later. To whoever finds this, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you found my dogs. Please know that Luna and Scout aren't just military animals, they're family. They've saved more lives than I can count, and they deserve to live their remaining years in peace, surrounded by love. Thank you for giving them what I no longer can. Sergeant Daniel Foster. There was also a second note, shorter, in different handwriting. The boy who saves a dog saves a part of his own soul. Dash Captain Marcus Webb. Tommy carefully placed both letters in his treasure box next to a photo of his father. 6 months later, the Mitchell family stood in front of a crowd at the local community center. Tommy, now 6, stood at a podium that had been lowered for his height. Hope sat beside him in a service vest, Scout flanking his other side. The 3 puppies, now almost full grown, sat with Emma and Linda in the front row. My dad was a hero, Tommy began, his voice clear and strong. He died saving people from a fire. I wanted to be brave like him, but I didn't know how. Then I found hope and courage in that water tank, and they taught me something important. He paused, looking at the crowd of children and parents who had come to hear their story. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. Being brave means you help anyway. Hope was hurt and scared, but she protected her puppies. Courage was scared too, but he kept trying to save his mom. They taught me that families protect each other, no matter what. Tommy looked at his mother and sister, then at his grandfather, and finally at Doctor, Sarah and Agent Diana, who had become extended family. We saved hope and courage, but really, they saved us. They brought our family back together after my dad died. They taught us that love is stronger than fear, and that even when bad things happen, good people will always try to help. The crowd erupted in applause, but Tommy wasn't finished. Agent Diana told me that hope and courage helped save 43 children from bad people. 43 kids got to go home to their families because these dogs were brave enough to do their job, even when it was dangerous. They're heroes, just like my dad was. He knelt down and hugged Hope, who licked his face enthusiastically, making everyone laugh. But now they're retired heroes, and their job is to be our family, to teach us about courage and hope and never giving up. And maybe that's the most important job of all. As Tommy left the stage, hand on Hope's head and Scout walking proudly beside him, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Later that evening, as the family settled in for dinner, Tommy asked a question that had been on his mind. Grandpa, do you think Dad knows about hope and courage and everything? Robert looked at his grandson, this remarkable little boy who had shown more courage than most adults ever would. I think your dad knows, Tommy, and I think he's incredibly proud of you. I still miss him, Tommy said quietly. We all do, Linda said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. But he left us something special. He left us his brave heart, and you carry it every day. Hope, lying under the table, placed her head on Tommy's feet, a gesture of comfort she had learned in the months since her rescue. Scout was by the door, ever watchful. The 3 puppies were scattered around the room, each having claimed a family member as their special person. We should write a book, Emma suggested suddenly, about everything that happened. So, other people know that sometimes the scariest situations can lead to the most beautiful friendships. What would we call it? Linda asked. Tommy thought for a moment, then smiled. The day Hope fell into a tank and found a family. Everyone laughed, but Emma was already pulling out her notebook. I'm serious. We could donate the money to help other military dogs find homes. And so began another chapter in their story. Emma wrote while Tommy provided the details, his memory of that day crystal clear. Linda added the medical perspective, Robert the investigative elements, and doctor. Sarah provided the veterinary insights, but the heart of the story was the bond between a boy and a dog, both broken by loss, both healed by love. The book was published a year later, with a foreword by Agent Diana Chen and Captain Marcus Webb. It raised over $100,000 for military dog rehabilitation and adoption programs. At the book launch, Tommy, now 7, stood with hope, her leg fully healed, though still bearing scars, and read the dedication. For Sergeant Daniel Foster, who died protecting the innocent. For Captain Marcus Webb, who sacrificed everything for the truth. For my dad, Marcus Mitchell, who taught me that heroes live in our hearts forever. And for hope and courage and faith and grace and valor, who proved that sometimes angels have 4 paws and wet noses. The crowd was larger this time, including several families who had adopted retired military dogs after hearing Tommy's story. Each had their own tale of healing, of bonds formed between human and animal that transcended explanation. Diana spoke last, her badge gleaming under the lights. In my 20 years with the FBI, I've seen the worst humanity has to offer. But I've also seen the best. Tommy Mitchell represents everything good in this world. Compassion without calculation, bravery without bravado, love without limits. She looked at Tommy, who was absently stroking Hope's ears, while Scout leaned against his other side. The trafficking ring we dismantled because of the evidence these dogs protected has led to over 200 arrests worldwide. Hundreds of children are safe today because a 5-year-old boy heard crying from a water tank and decided to help. Because he was raised by a family that taught him that doing the right thing isn't a choice, it's a responsibility. She paused, her voice growing, thick with emotion. Sergeant Foster once told me that dogs judge people not by their strength or status, but by their hearts. Luna, Hope, chose Tommy because she recognized something in him that we all see now. A pure soul who would literally climb into darkness to save someone in need. The event ended with a demonstration. Hope, despite her retirement, showed the crowd some of her detection abilities, finding hidden items with Tommy as her handler. Scout demonstrated protection protocols, gently but firmly positioning himself between Emma and a volunteer threat. The 3 younger dogs showed off their own emerging skills, each having been trained in basic search and rescue by Tommy and Robert. As people filed out, many stopped to thank the Mitchell family, to pet the dogs, to share their own stories of loss and redemption. One woman lingered, holding the hand of a young girl about Tommy's age. "This is Sophia," she said quietly. "She was one of the children rescued because of the evidence your dogs protected." Tommy looked at Sophia, who was hiding behind her mother's leg. Without hesitation, he brought Hope forward. "This is Hope. She helped find you. Would you like to pet her?" Sophia nodded shyly, reaching out to touch Hope's soft fur. The dog, with that incredible intuition she possessed, lowered herself to the ground, making herself less intimidating. Sophia knelt beside her, and Hope gently licked her hand. "She says hello," Tommy translated solemnly, "and she's very happy you're safe." Sophia smiled. Her mother later said it was the first real smile since her rescue, and hugged Hope around the neck. The dog's tail wagged gently, careful not to knock the little girl over. "Thank you," Sophia whispered to Hope, then looked at Tommy. "Thank you for saving her so she could save me." Tommy, wise beyond his years, simply said, "We all save each other. That's what families do." As the Mitchell family walked home that evening, their pack of 5 dogs ranging around them, the sun setting in brilliant oranges and purples, Tommy asked a question. "Do you think there are other dogs out there like Hope? Ones that need saving?" Robert and Linda exchanged glances. They knew that look in Tommy's eyes, that determination that had led him into a water tank 2 years ago. "Probably," Linda said carefully. "Then we should help them," Tommy said simply. "Dad always said we should leave the world better than we found it." And so, the Mitchell family's mission expanded. They became a certified foster family for retired military and police dogs, helping them transition to civilian life. Their home became a way station for healing, both for dogs and for the families who would eventually adopt them. Hope and Scout became therapy dogs, visiting hospitals and schools with Tommy and Emma. They worked with children who had experienced trauma, offering the kind of wordless comfort that only animals can provide. The puppies, Faith, Grace, and Valor, were trained as service dogs. Faith went to a veteran with PTSD, Grace to a child with autism, and Valor joined the local police department as a community liaison dog, bridging the gap between law enforcement and citizens. But they all came home for holidays, the Mitchell house filling with wagging tails and joyful barks, a testament to the power of one small boy's decision to help. 5 years after that fateful day at the water tank, Tommy, now 10, stood before Congress, testifying about the need for better protection and retirement programs for military working dogs. Hope, now showing gray around her muzzle but still strong, sat beside him. "These dogs give everything," Tommy said, his voice carrying the same conviction it had held at 5 years old. "They risk their lives, suffer injuries, face trauma, all to protect us. The least we can do is make sure they have safe, loving homes when their service ends." He looked down at Hope, who gazed back with those intelligent eyes that had first met his in a concrete tank. "Hope taught me that being brave isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and choosing love anyway. Every military dog deserves what Hope found, a family who sees them not as equipment to be discarded, but as heroes to be honored." The bill passed unanimously. As they left the Capitol building, Tommy's phone buzzed with a message from Emma, now 17, and preparing for veterinary school, inspired by Dr. Sarah. "Grandpa just got a call. There's a dog trapped in a storm drain 2 towns over. Local fire department can't reach it." Tommy looked at his mom, who sighed but smiled. "I'll drive," she said. They arrived to find a scene eerily similar to that day 5 years ago, a frightened animal trapped in a dangerous place, local authorities unsure how to proceed. But this time, Tommy wasn't alone. He had Hope, despite her age, Scout, still vigilant and strong, and most importantly, he had the knowledge and experience of 5 years of rescues. The dog in the drain turned out to be another German Shepherd, this one younger, clearly abandoned. As Tommy descended into the drain, properly equipped this time, with full safety gear and his grandfather supervising, he found not just one dog, but a whole litter of newborn puppies the dog had been protecting. "She must have crawled in here to give birth, Doctor," Sarah said, having arrived to help. Then the recent rains made it impossible for her to get out with the puppies. It took 3 hours, but they rescued all of them. The mother dog, weak but grateful, licked Tommy's face when he carried her to safety. The puppies, eyes still closed, mewed pitifully until reunited with their mother. "What do we name her?" Emma asked, already knowing they would be keeping her at least temporarily. Tommy looked at the dog, who despite her ordeal was already trying to nurse her puppies. "Promise," he said, "because every rescue is a promise that things will get better." As they drove home, the new dog safe in the back with Hope and Scout watching over them like grandparents, Linda reached over and squeezed Tommy's hand. "Your father would be so proud," she said. "You've carried on his legacy in ways he never could have imagined." Tommy squeezed back. "We all have. We're all heroes, just like Dad said. We just needed Hope to show us how." The story of the Mitchell family and their dog spread far and wide. They received letters from around the world, from families who had been inspired to adopt rescue dogs, from veterans who found healing with service animals, from children who had learned about bravery from Tommy's example. But perhaps the most meaningful letter came from an unexpected source. It was addressed to Tommy in shaky handwriting. "Dear Tommy, my name is Colonel James Harrison. I was Sergeant Foster's commanding officer. I've followed your story since the beginning, and I wanted you to know something Daniel told me before his final mission. He said Luna had a gift beyond her training. She could sense the good in people, the ones worth saving. He believed she would find her way to where she was meant to be, even if he couldn't be there to guide her. You proved him right. Luna found you, or perhaps you found each other, because that's how the universe works sometimes. It puts broken souls together so they can heal each other. Thank you for giving Luna and Scout the life Daniel always wanted for them. Thank you for turning tragedy into triumph. And thank you for reminding an old soldier that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism come from the smallest hands and the purest hearts. With deepest respect, Colonel James Harrison P.S. Daniel would have loved you, kid. You're everything he believed in. Tommy framed the letter and hung it in his room, next to photos of his father, Sergeant Foster, and all the dogs they had rescued over the years. 10 years passed. Tommy, now 20, stood at the graduation ceremony for his certification as a professional search and rescue specialist. Hope, now ancient in dog years, but still insisting on being by his side, wore a special honorary vest for the occasion. Scout had passed 2 years earlier, surrounded by family, his last act being to lick Tommy's hand and wag his tail once more. They buried him in the backyard under a tree planted in his honor, with full military honors attended by Agent Diana, Captain Webb, and dozens of families whose children had been saved by the evidence Scout and Hope had protected. Faith, grace, and valor had all lived full lives of service, touching hundreds of lives before joining Scout in the Garden of Heroes. Promise and her puppies had grown to continue the legacy, each one placed in homes where they could make a difference. But Hope endured, as if she knew her job wasn't done yet. As Tommy received his certification, he announced his plans to start a non-profit organization called Hope's Heroes, dedicated to rescuing, rehabilitating, and rehoming military and service dogs while also training young people in animal rescue and care. It started with a cry for help from a water tank, Tommy said in his speech. It became a mission to save not just dogs, but the people they heal. Every rescue is a reminder that compassion is the greatest strength we possess. The crowd erupted in applause, but Tommy's eyes were on Hope, who, despite her clouded eyes and stiff joints, sat proudly, as if she understood every word. That night, as the family celebrated Tommy's achievement, Hope did something she hadn't done in years. She climbed onto Tommy's bed with great effort and curled up beside him like she had when he was small. "You did it, girl," Tommy whispered, stroking her gray muzzle. "You taught me everything. How to be brave, how to love, how to never give up." Hope's tail wagged weakly and she pressed her nose into his hand, that same gesture of trust and love from so many years ago. 2 weeks later, Hope passed peacefully in her sleep, Tommy's hand resting on her head. The entire town attended her memorial service. The mayor declared it Hope Day, an annual reminder that one dog and one boy's courage had changed countless lives. Agent Diana, now retired, spoke at the service. "In my career, I've seen evil that defies comprehension. But Hope and Tommy showed me that good is stronger, love is stronger, and sometimes strength comes not from weapons or authority, but from the simple act of refusing to walk away when someone needs help." Captain Webb, still in his wheelchair but now running a veteran support group with his own service dog, added, "Foster believed dogs were angels in disguise. Hope proved him right. She didn't just save lives, she transformed them." Dr. Sarah, who had become the region's leading expert on service animal care, said simply, "Hope taught us that healing isn't just physical. It's emotional, spiritual, and sometimes it comes with 4 paws and unlimited love." But it was Emma, now a successful veterinarian, who captured it best. Hope didn't just fall into that water tank by accident. She fell into our lives exactly when we needed her most. She brought our family back from the edge of despair and showed us that our capacity to love and help others was the best way to honor Dad's memory. As they laid Hope to rest beside Scout, under the tree that had grown strong and tall, Tommy placed a small plaque. "Here lies Hope, Luna, Hero, Angel." She fell into darkness and brought light. She was broken and became whole. She was saved and became a savior. Good girl, forever and always. The work continued. Hope's Heroes grew from a local organization to a national movement. Tommy traveled the country, teaching rescue techniques, advocating for animal welfare, and sharing the story of a 5-year-old boy who heard crying from a water tank and chose to help. At every event, he carried a photo of Hope and a simple message. One act of kindness can change the world. One person choosing to see help can start a chain reaction of goodness that never ends. Years later, when Tommy had children of his own, he would take them to visit Hope's grave, telling them the story of the bravest dog he ever knew and the day that changed everything. "Was she really that special, Dad?" his daughter would ask. Tommy would smile, remembering those intelligent eyes meeting his in the bottom of a concrete tank, remembering the weight of puppies in his small arms, remembering the feeling of Hope's nose pressed against his hand in trust. She was more than special, he would say. She was proof that love is the most powerful force in the universe, and that sometimes, when we save others, we really save ourselves. The legacy lived on in every dog rescued, every child inspired to help, every family brought together by the simple truth that Hope had taught them. We all have the power to be heroes. We just have to choose to climb down into the darkness and bring someone back to the light. And somewhere, in whatever place heroes go when their work is done, a German shepherd named Hope watched over them all, her tail wagging eternally, her spirit living on in every act of kindness done in her name. The water tank still stands on the abandoned Henderson property, but it's no longer a symbol of despair. The town turned it into a memorial with a bronze statue of a boy and a dog at its base. The inscription reads, "On this spot, October 15th, a 5-year-old boy named Tommy Mitchell heard a cry for help and didn't walk away. He saved 2 dogs, who saved him right back." This monument stands as a reminder that heroes come in all sizes, and sometimes wear fur instead of capes. May we all have the courage to answer when someone cries for help. Visitors come from around the world to see it, to leave flowers and dog toys, to share their own stories of rescue and redemption. And every October 15th, on Hope Day, the Mitchell family returns to that spot where it all began. They bring their current foster dogs, the latest rescues in need of healing. They stand in a circle around the tank, now painted with murals of all the dogs who found homes through their program. And Tommy, now grown but still carrying that same brave heart, tells the story again. "It started with a cry," he always begins. "A cry that most people would have ignored, but we didn't ignore it. We answered it. And in answering, we discovered that the smallest act of kindness can ripple out in ways we never imagined." He looks at the faces around him, his mother, still strong and compassionate, his grandfather, aged but proud, Emma with her own children now, Doctor, Sarah, Agent Diana, Captain Webb, and dozens of others whose lives were touched by Hope. "We saved them," he concludes, "but the truth is, they saved us first. They showed us who we could be if we just had the courage to help." And as the sun sets over that old water tank, painting the sky in shades of hope and promise, the sound of dogs, barking, happy, safe, loved dogs, fills the air like a hymn of gratitude. Because in the end, that's what Hope taught them. Love multiplies, kindness spreads, and sometimes the most profound changes in the world begin with a single voice crying out in the darkness and a single soul brave enough to answer. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of compassion and the incredible bond between humans and animals, please like and share. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and share your own rescue stories. Subscribe to hear more tales of hope, courage, and the extraordinary ways that love can change the world. Remember, we all have the power to be someone's hero. Sometimes it just takes listening for the cry for help. Together, we can make the world a kinder place, one rescue at a time.